want to welcome to the studio Dr. Christoper Keck, who is the president and CEO of Open Hearts Family Wellness. We're going to be talking about trauma-informed care. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I interviewed you not long ago, and I was really struck by your story. You've worked in the field of trauma-informed care for some years. You have your own personal story.
I do, and my story is similar to everyone. Adversity hits everybody, unfortunately, nowadays. If not in our own family, it's because the human story around us. So there's three layers of story: my story and my family stories. What happened in my family? My parents, despite their best efforts, needed to live their best lives without each other. And so divorce hit, and we, as a kid, I took it on as my own. Like, I was responsible. I couldn't put words to that at the time, and nobody told me it was my fault. But I carried that with me, and didn't ask for help, didn't know I needed help with it until it got to the point where that became like a burden in a backpack that I just couldn't take off. And so it just so happened I kept learning. I went to college for psychology, started learning a little bit more, and my professor, Dr. Donahue, said, if you want to do counseling, then it's good to get counseling. So I sought for it. I found a counselor. Louise was my counselor, and she provided a safe place for me to start thinking about my story, and then the broader context of my family story. And then taking that further, I've gotten to see the human story a little bit larger than just me and my own family.
I want to jump in there because I was telling Brandon a little bit about your backstory after I met you. And Brandon and I always talk about this. Sometimes that one person can totally change the trajectory for you, and this was your person. You were really struggling. I mean, you tell the story well right now and very concise, and you're a doctor and you're smart and you've worked in the field, but this trauma for you was very deep. And you told me when we spoke that she really jumped in there and gave you so much hope.
She did, because I could see in that moment, those moments where I was experiencing the pain and realizing how much shame I was carrying, feeling like I was responsible for something that I wasn't. And with that, she shined light on my story from a different vantage point that helped me see more than the shadows that I thought were surrounding me.
And it's what I've told you before, right? That just a divorce, and I don't mean just a divorce, but a divorce is a traumatic life experience for a child. And this is why it's so important to never compare traumas with anybody else. But we have to understand that when a divorce happens, we have to make sure that the children are being taken care of, because the children, as in your case, will feel like they're the reasons why mom and dad are divorcing, that they will harbor and they will carry that burden of shame and that weight on their shoulders.
Correct, and really the way it's described, what a trauma is, how somebody would see something as traumatic for themselves, is if an event occurs that they do not have the resources to cope with the stress. So for a kid, that's an adult, somebody that's supportive to them, that helps them, that's, as the circle of security describes, bigger, stronger, wiser, and kind. They can help them have a safe place and a safe haven to come to when they need help organizing their feelings.
I never heard that, the circle of security. I've never heard that term.
Yeah,
it's a modality. You can find some resources that describe it. It's infant-toddler mental health, but it's applicable to adults too. Once you learn it, you see it's everywhere. It's even in the leadership of an organization too.
But that trauma has now led you to your life's purpose, right? And so now tell me a little bit about your organization, Open Hearts, and the impact that you guys are trying to have on the community.
When someone needs help, it helps for them because of that broader human story. If they feel like, I know the people that are there. And there's a hope that they will know someone if they look like them. So we have a very diverse group of people working at Open Hearts, and it's in all layers of the organization too. And so with this, one thing that one element of trauma-informed care is cultural humility. And cultural humility starts with knowing our story and our family story, and then how our family fits with everyone else around us. As a white male, I only knew my own experience, but then hearing from Latinos, the Latinx population, hearing from the African American people and things that they have experienced of this culture in the U.S., I didn't experience that myself. If I can expand my understanding through a curiosity, through a humility to understand them and their experience of the same things, then we get to shine that same light and see more things than shadows if we're shining light from multiple angles.
And Dr. Keck, I have a lot of questions that I'd like to ask you. We only have a minute left, and I've done quite a bit of reporting on Open Hearts. One thing I'd like you to point out for our audience is what you guys do is you reach into the communities that are underserved. You deal with a lot of refugees, and that is something truly important within the mental health space, because if someone needs physical care, an emergency room, they will take care of that. But in a lot of these homes, the mental health is suffering, and you guys are really actually going out into the community to make sure people are getting help they need.
That's right. Anybody can walk in through the door and ask us for help. If we can serve them, we will. If we need to send them to somewhere else, we will have some resources to help them. But how we would help them if they were to walk in our doors or give us a call is we'd first want to sit down with them and understand their story. Their individual story, their family story, and from there, figure out a plan that works for them. We seek to bring that safety and trustworthiness so that they know that we're not going to impose something on them, but we're going to find what would be worth their time to help them move forward and cope with, find the resources to deal with the adversity in their lives.
But also understanding things culturally, and especially with the Latino community, is that oftentimes they will not share sadness. They won't share that they're depressed, especially the father within the family system, because culturally they have never been allowed to. They've been trained not to share that stuff.
Well, I have to say very briefly, because one story that sat with me that actually I was told when I was on your campus was about a family who came from Mexico, and the little boy was really suffering. No one could figure out what was happening. Your folks did not give up on this family. It really makes me want to cry. The little boy, it ended up being uncovered. He was being sexually molested by the uncle. Yeah. And because your folks stayed with them, I think you saved that kid's life. I really do.
If there is harm happening and it is unnoticed, then it's difficult for a kid to. It's chronic stress. It's chronic trauma that happens again and again, and neuroplasticity says that they learn to develop. This expectation of life is always this way. Yeah. And so being able to intervene and help someone develop hope that maybe I can learn something new, maybe I can set down this backpack of overburdened experiences to get some help, even just to look at the backpack and take a couple of things out at a time. There's no magic formula for immediate relief from the adversities of life. But if we develop habits to respond to the events of our life, then we can pursue mental strength, mental health for ourselves.
And you know what you said was so crucial there with this little boy, giving him an opportunity to be able to share that experience so he does not carry that weight, because neuroplasticity plays a huge role in child molestation and the formation of the brain. And I know that because I was a survivor of child molestation as well, between the ages of 7 to 10, and the impact that had on me. And if it is not addressed, the path will likely look like mine. You'll get into heavy substance use disorder issue as a way to cope, because you're constantly in fight or flight.
Right.
Dr. Keck, thank you so much for being here and sharing your personal story, and for all of the great work you're doing over at Open Hearts. We really appreciate you.